This folder just ran a real piece of a business by itself while I sat here and watched. It wrote a customer newsletter for a small coffee roastery. Then it took that same newsletter and turned it into a short launch announcement, and it saved both in one go. I never opened a code editor. I never touched the keyboard except to type one plain English sentence telling it what I wanted. That is what Claude Code Skills can do. And over the next few minutes, I am going to build a tiny business with you. We will go from an empty folder all the way to a folder that runs the work for you. Here is the part to hang on to. By the end, that one folder will quietly run the repeatable jobs of a one-person business, and you will understand exactly how it does it. So let us start where everything starts, an empty folder. Before we build anything, let me show you the one idea this whole thing rests on. Once it clicks, the rest is easy. You would think a Claude Code skill is some clever piece of code, the kind of thing you would need a computer science degree to write. It is not. A skill is one plain English file that teaches Claude how to do a single job, the way you would want it done. That is the entire idea. Here, let me open a real one. This is a skill called Draft Newsletter, and look at what is actually inside it. There is a name at the top and then a few sentences of instructions. Write a subject line, then an opening hook, then 3 short sections. It is just plain words. It is the kind of note you would leave a new team member so they could do the job without you hovering over them. So that is all a skill really is. A note written in plain words instead of code. Claude reads that note and it quietly does exactly what the note says. And there is one line in here doing a lot of quiet work right at the top. It is called the description. It is a single sentence that says what this skill does and when to reach for it. That little line is how Claude decides on its own that this is the note to grab the moment you ask for a newsletter. You are not pressing a button to switch it on. You write down what the job is and when it applies, and Claude picks the right worker the second the task shows up. And the file lives in a folder on your computer. That folder is where your whole business is going to grow. Now, you might be bracing for the scary part, the black screen with the blinking cursor that programmers use. There is not one. You need exactly one thing to follow along, and that is a Claude Code subscription. That is just the brain doing all the thinking for you. So the whole shopping list is a laptop and that account, nothing else. And here is where a non-coder actually does this. It is a tab called Cowork, and it lives right inside the Claude desktop app sitting next to chat. No terminal, no install. It is a box. You type what you want in plain English, the way you would message a coworker, and it does the work right there. There are 3 doors into this really. There is Claude Desktop, there is the Cowork tab, and there is VS Code. If you are a developer who likes that, you only have to walk through one of them. We are using Cowork the whole way because if you have never written a line of code, this is the friendliest room in the house. Quick hello before we get our hands dirty, because there is a whole room of people doing exactly this. I run a group called Agent Skills Academy. There are 550 odd people in there, building and running their own little folders just like this one. Your first 7 days are free and the link's in the description. Come build alongside us. Okay, back to it. We are going to write your very first skill and we are going to keep it almost silly on purpose. I want you to feel in your gut how easy this really is. So I type one sentence into Cowork. Build my first skill. Make one that takes a name and replies with a short warm greeting plus one beginner tip. Save it in the skills folder and then run it once with the name Pragati to show me it works. And watch what happens. Claude writes the actual file for me. It creates the folder. It writes the plain English skill. It saves it and then it runs it. And a friendly little greeting comes back, addressed to me. I did not write the file, I described the job, and Claude wrote it down and ran it. That right there, that is the afternoon win. The thing the internet made sound like a semester just happened in under a minute. And now there is one skill sitting in your folder, the first brick. A greeting is cute, but nobody's building a business on hello. So let us make the next skill a real job, the kind a freelancer or a small shop owner actually needs done every single week. We are building a one-person newsletter business. Now, this is brick 1. Same move as before. I asked Claude to create a skill called Draft Newsletter, one that turns any topic into a finished, ready-to-send newsletter. Subject line, a hook, 3 short sections, a call to action, and a warm sign-off. And just like the greeting, Claude writes the whole skill for me and drops it in the folder. Now here is the picture I want you to keep for the rest of this video. Think about a small office. Every skill you write is one trained worker hired to do exactly one job the way you taught them. The greeting skill is the person at the front desk. This newsletter skill is your writer, and the folder is the office they all work in. Right now your office has one writer in it, so let us give them something to write. I hand Draft Newsletter a real topic, what I learned the year I said no to my biggest customer. And back comes a finished newsletter, subject line and all, ready to send. And here's the bit that made me sit up. I never told it to give the reader homework. But because I taught the skill once to always end with one clear call to action, it closed with this. Open your numbers, find your biggest customer, and work out what % of your income they really are. That is the difference between a chatbot spitting out words and a worker who knows the job. I described the job once in plain English, and now it does it that thoroughly every single time. This next part is the one that turns a neat trick into a real system. And it is the idea this whole channel is built on. It is called chaining. Right now, you have got one worker, but a real job is never just one step. You write the newsletter and then somebody has to write the little announcement that tells people it is out. Chaining is where you give Claude one plain English instruction and one skill's finished work becomes the next skill's starting material. Automatically, back to back. So I add a second worker to the office, a skill that writes announcements, and then I say it all in one breath. Write the June newsletter for my Balcony Gardeners Club, save it, then read that saved draft and write the short note announcing it, and it just goes. The writer writes the newsletter and saves it, then the announcer opens that exact file and writes the announcement off the back of it. One instruction, 2 workers, and the output of the first handed straight to the second. That handoff, that is the chain. That is the moment your folder stops being a drawer of separate notes and starts being a little assembly line. Remember that very first clip? The folder that ran a whole job by itself while I just watched? This is it. This is that exact moment, and now you know what is actually happening under the hood. I point the same chain at a real business job and I describe it in one go. Write this month's customer newsletter for my coffee roastery covering the new single origin bean, one quick brewing tip and a thank you to the regulars. Then turn it into the announcement to post when it goes out. One sentence and the office goes to work. The writer drafts the newsletter and saves it. The announcer reads that draft and writes the post off the back of it. And then there are 2 finished pieces sitting in the folder, ready to send. That is the loop I promised you at the start, closing right here. The folder runs the repeatable work and you are not down in the weeds doing it by hand. You asked and the office delivered. And here is the real math, the kind that actually matters. That newsletter and that announcement written by hand, carefully on brand, is most of a morning. Maybe you do it once a month and dread the Sunday it lands on. Now it is the length of one sentence plus the time it takes to read the result and nod. And notice the quiet thing. You never told it how to write a newsletter in that sentence. You taught that once back when you wrote the skill. Now you just point, the work happens, and you got your Sunday back. A real business is more than one job though. Sending a newsletter is lovely, but at some point you actually have to launch something, and that is a different worker. So we grow the office. I add the marketing skills and I ask for a 1-week launch campaign for that same coffee roastery introducing the new bean. A short content calendar across email and social, 3 posts with captions in the warm brand voice and a subject line for the launch email. And out it comes, saved as one file, campaign.md. A whole week planned. Notice what just happened to your folder. It started as an empty drawer, then it had a greeting, then a writer, then an announcer, and now it has got a marketer too. Every skill you add is one more worker in the office, and suddenly the office can do one more thing it flat out could not do yesterday. That is how a one-person business quietly stops being a one-person grind. You are not hiring anyone, you are not paying for 5 different apps to glue together, you just write one more plain English note and the folder gets a little more capable every single time you do. Here is a beat that matters more than it looks, because this is the part nobody tells the beginners. You can take all these workers and package them into one thing you actually own. It is called a plugin. That is just a tidy box that holds a set of skills together with your name on it and a version number. So I tell Claude to bundle my content skills into a plugin called my dash content dash kit. Give it a proper name and a version and zip it up so I can drag it straight into the customize menu under skills. And it does. Now those loose notes are not scattered anymore. They are one named owned kit. Think of it like incorporating the little office. Same workers, but now they are a company you can carry. You can drop that plugin into a fresh Claude window and your whole team shows up at once. You could hand it to a teammate, you could down the road sell it. But the point I really want to land is the ownership. You built this, it is yours. It is not rented from some platform that can change the rules on you next quarter. The folder is your asset. Now you do not have to build every single worker yourself. And this is where it gets genuinely fun. Anthropic, the company that makes Claude, ships its own ready-made plugins, whole sets of skills built for one kind of job, free to drop into your folder. So your office can hire experienced staff you did not have to train. Let me show you. There is an official sales plugin. I add it and I point it at a real job. Research a prospect, a freight company called Northwind Logistics that just raised money and hired a new revenue leader. Then draft a personalized outreach sequence from an account exec at my company. And the official sales skills go to work. One of them researches the company and writes up an account brief. Then another one reads that brief and drafts a multi-touch outreach sequence, personalized, ready for me to review. Watch what just happened to the business. It started as a newsletter. Now, with one ready-made plugin, the same folder can go and find clients. Your skills plus Anthropic S plugins and the office covers a whole new department without you writing a thing. So step back and look at what we actually built. We started with an empty folder. And here is what you can now do that you could not an hour ago. You can open Cowork, describe a job in plain English, and watch Claude write the skill. Then you can chain a few of them so one folder runs a real slice of a business for you. That folder now writes the newsletter, announces it, plans a launch campaign, and finds clients. And it runs the steps back to back from one plain English sentence. That is not a pile of tricks. That is the repeatable work of a real one-person business sitting in a folder run by an office of little workers you taught one at a time. And before I land this, let me be honest about where the folder stops. Because the people overselling this will not tell you. It does the repeatable jobs, the ones you would do the same way every time. It does not make the judgment calls. You still decide which bean to launch. You still read the outreach before it goes out, and nothing gets sent until you say so. The folder drafts and you approve, and it runs while your laptop is awake on a paid plan. It is not a machine humming away in a data center overnight. None of that is a weakness though, that is the deal. You stay the owner and the owner is the one who steers. Here is the shift I really want you to feel because it is bigger than any one skill. You did not write a single line of code today, you wrote plain English the same way you would brief a person, and a folder turned it into a business that runs the repeatable work for you. That is the new way of working, the one almost nobody has actually learned yet. You do not do the job anymore, you direct it. You are the owner now, not the operator, and that is a different life than the one where you are doing all 5 jobs yourself at midnight. And if you want to build this for real, brick by brick, with people working on the exact same thing right now, that is what we do inside Agent Skills Academy. You bring the business you want to run, the group helps you wire the folder that runs it, and your first 7 days are free. The link's in the description and pinned in the comments. One more thing before you go, you just watch the whole arc, empty folder to running business on purpose so you would see the shape of it. Next, I will show you the 80% of Claude Code skills you actually need to get good fast in a single afternoon. Watch that one next. It is the perfect follow-up to this. That is it. A folder, a few plain English notes, and a business that runs the work while you steer it. Go write your first one.